One to the webinar, which is involving three exciting, knowledgeable young ladies that will take us through a discussion on their equine grazing management. Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which you're joining us, and also for where we are on Wurundjeri land here in Gisborne, and pay my respects to the custodians of the land that we're on, and also extend that to any First Nations people that might be joining us today or on the recording. So the first speaker we have today is Amanda, and she's going to be talking about how she manages goose. Amanda?
Okay, now I'm very amateur at this, so bear with me. So yes, we live on very lucky 150 acres, and I have a gorgeous off the track horse called Goose, who is a complete goose at times, and his best mate, Maxie. The farm is 150 acres, but I'm actually only allowed 2.5 acres due to my husband. So generally we allow 3+ acres for cow and calf pair, allowed goose and 2 rams, 2.5 acres. So he owes me 1/2 acre. On the farm we run Red Angus, Poll Dorset, Ryland, Border, Leicester sheep, and my horse. And here's another one with his best mate. Oh, slide 3. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the grazing management. I used to do and occasionally do the rotational grazing, which is small scale with 3 strands of polywire. One is a really good thing because actually goose is a windsucker, so that does help with one of his issues. And one of those paddocks, we would actually do about 12 cells. Dealing with this, we would look at the shelter and water. So in this paddock, I would use the far trees is sort of northwest. So he's able to go down there and have shelter. And then the other end of the paddock, he's northwest. We will possibly think of doing so when the weather comes up north, there is something, but how many horses use their shelter? The water has been brilliant. We do above ground water pipes, which actually are 92 points on the property. Not that I get to use them all. Out to the ground, there's more flexibility moving it around, and they get fresh water. Right, yes, not much grass on the left-hand side one. That was back in March. So we decided to, on one of the courses, Jason suggested the track system, which I had my doubts about, but I have to say is absolutely brilliant. So that restricted contained paddock around the outside of it. So there are narrow bits, but wider bits for him to park up for shade and shelter. He's much happier eating the older grass as well now. For him being such a horse too, with the track system, there's less running around, and he's much happier. So when he can hear things, instead of hooning around like an idiot, he can actually go and have a look. And he's constantly on the move, so he's clocking up his kilometers. Ah, right. Oh. What slide is this? Sorry, guys.
Bare ground and what
Bare
you,
ground.
what you covered
So
with
that's not my worming one, is it?
no, it's with the hay.
Okay, I'm gonna. Okay. This bare ground. Oh no, very good.
All right, I'll go to the next one. So that was you with some bare ground and you covered it with some hay.
Yes,
and
poo and stuff.
So, yeah.
And that was actually on previous off. So when I was doing my cell grazing, I moved him off those paddocks, but I chucked the poo on the grazed. We can see, yes, on the left-hand side one. Anyway, on the, so it allowed the grass and ground to recover. Sorry, guys. As you can see, yes, this is a new, this is like one of the best paddocks on the farm, which I'm having to fight my husband not to put his cows on.
That's before and after shot.
Yes, before.
So March, April.
So 6.5 months, 6 months. Yeah. I mean, it's been looking like that for a while. So good. So it's really had chance to rest and recover. And then this is the side that this will be the start of regenerating the track. So it got very sort of wet and muddy. So poo's gone down and there's some old hay that I put on there, and then hopefully that will recover as good as the rest of the paddock. Ah, here we are, the worming one. Okay, now worming. We're very conscious of our biology on the farm, you know, the environment, soil, grasses, animals, birds and insects, and those good old dung beetles. We've carefully chosen not to worm because horses and sheep have terminal hosts for each other. So, you know, most animals have some sort of worms, and hopefully they build up a resistance to the worms. I do a worm egg count to see what his system's doing, but you know, if he is sick or needs it, I will worm, but it's not, I try not to, because it sort of doesn't help the biology on the land. Okay, so here we have that healthy goose on spring grass. The great thing again with the track system that I can, with the grass in the middle, I can turn him out for an hour or so and then put him back on the track. So he's the good old long grass. And I have to say, this track system has been really, really good. He's quite happy. You know, he's better eating longer old grass than the short new. In the spring, I do actually put him on a Graze Easy, which is a Calm Healthy horses, which does help. I think it's when the nitrogen and phosphorus is quite. So hopefully happy horse and less crazy horse. I got more to do.
No, there's all the lessons you've learned. Excellent.
Sorry, guys, that was very amateur.
Excellent. While we change over to the next, over to Leah, that Equine Land Care Group, that the Upper Deep Creek, if you're in the Upper Deep Creek network or surrounding it, looking to establish a new Equine Land Care Group for horse owners in Macedon Ranges and surroundings. So if you'd like to receive updates specifically about this, please contact Amy Jackson. Now we're over to Leah.
Hello. We run an adjustment property in the Macedon Ranges. We are on 36 acres in Bolingbrook, And at the time of writing, we had 11 horses on the property, mixed breeds, some in work, some very much retired, but of sport horses, standbreds, thoroughbreds, stock horse, whaler, and riding pony. So we've got a bit of a mix with different nutritional requirements and varying states of dental health. So for our herd management, majority of horses are run in herds. We do have 2 horses that are in private paddocks, but we're finding in terms of maintenance and grazing, it's much, much more efficient. It saves us time. In terms of infrastructure, we can actually save money on having, I guess, central points, which we are moving over to. Having done the grazing course, it's more about not just grass, it's about soil, about microbes, it's about healthy pastures, healthy horse, worming, dung beetles. We've learned a few things we can do. We're doing some things really well, but there's huge room of improvement. And learning about strip grazing, we thought we're doing pretty well with rotational grazing and resting paddocks, reducing worm burden. All the behaviour, benefits, but there's always more to learn. So, there's lots of things that we can implement, but at the moment, this is what we're doing and we're moving forward. So majority of our nutrition is native grass, and we feed lots of grass. We make sure that there's, competing with the kangaroos, but ensuring that we're resting paddocks. When we are in the cooler months, we'll have hay cut from neighbouring properties, and that is native grass. Then we've got a small amount of lucerne and some supplements, and depending on each horse's nutritional requirements. But majority of their diet is forage, and it's mainly grass. We were, when we first moved to the property, being roughly there for coming up to 8 years, told how paddocks were rubbish. We need to improve these pastures. We had just purchased property. We're like, hold on a second, let's save some money here. Didn't go down that route, and thankfully we've learned that native pasture is actually really great. We're trying to keep the biodiversity of the grasses, and again with rotational grazing, do it better by doing strip grazing, because then the horses can't selectively graze their favourite grasses or the sweetest grasses. And we're trying to get better. At the moment we have overgrazed, but we are trying to get better at moving them off the grass, because as you can see, grass is grazed down quite low. You just lose so much of that root capacity, which means that you've got less organic matter, you've got less microbes in the soil, less aeration, less water carrying capacity. So coming into drought, it's really important. Erosion, increased heat in the soil affecting the microbes. There's so much I didn't know about, and it's just getting that pasture management. As I said, we thought we were doing a fairly good job with rotational grazing, but yeah, there's even more tweaking to that we can improve on. So again, more about worming. But we historically did a lot of harrowing. We are moving away from that, but we need to put some things in place before we do that. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. With our worming, we are also moving away from, worming every sequel counts, because we want to promote dung beetles on the property, which can improve the soil, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. And again, as Amanda said, we just basically will be looking at worming when our fecal counts are guiding us. And there's no new worming products coming out on the market. There is resorting, so we think of it as just healthy ecosystem with grass, microbes, dung beetles, and horses. So by harrowing, we kind of break up the manure, which means that we're not getting dung beetles. With our wormers, they can affect the dung beetles. But if we can get a good population of dung beetles, then they will help to break the worm cycle. They'll improve the soil by taking that nutrition down into the soil and also aerating the pasture in the soil. So yeah, we can do better. This is our gate, our horses' weight for us, mainly for extra feed. We are planning on putting in a loafing area, which will basically mean that we can minimise that soil erosion. You can see in the gateways that there's quite a lot of loss of soil from erosion compaction. So being in a water catchment for Melbourne Water, we have got the ability to use that to the advantage of improving the property and also improving the waterways. By fencing off our dams, we will protect the biodiversity of that. We'll also reduce contamination to the dams into the waterways. Again, we can surface our laneways and develop those loafing areas, which will be really important in winter when everything turns to mud and obviously we lose that topsoil. But also when the grass is high in sugar, we can take horses off and again just maintain and protect those paddocks. And it also is somewhere to provide and reduce hoof abscesses, those types of things. In summary, we've got just over 36 acres and we've got 10 plus horses, mentioned herds. We mainly keep it pretty simple with our feeding, rotational grazing, but moving towards doing some strip grazing. We will look at, once the soil with that manure, reducing harrowing completely to non-existent, doing fecal egg counts instead of just worming according to the seasons, hopefully getting some dung beetles, and with Melbourne Water, we will look at doing some improvements to the land. So yeah, it's not just about grass, it's about having healthy paddocks. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Leah. And our final speaker this evening is Justine. So there's a photo of Justine's mob. So over to you.
Hi, we have 14 acres, of which there's about 11 in the paddocks. There's also a yard and there is a track. It's a long, narrow property and there's a track that runs through down the length, and each of the paddocks connects up into that track, and the track moves to a shed with a big loaf to it, which is the only point at which there is water as well. And there's a big trough that they often all stand around. We have usually between 4 and 6 horses, so 6 is the most we've had. They all live as one herd, and we've got everything from horses to lots of retirees, 17-hand horse, and they have a mixture of breeds and metabolic requirements. So we do have some challenges in making sure that what works for the thoroughbreds also the fat horses, or fat-prone horses. And the Brumby just fits in wherever and is the easiest horse on the property. So what we do is for 4 or 5 months of the year, the ground is too wet, and if they went onto the paddocks, which are on a fair slope, they would very turn them into mud. They would be very slippery. There's literally water at the surface of the ground for several months during a normal winter, not the last 2. So what we've done is used the existing driveway that was there and fenced it out to confine the horses to. So they move up and down the track. We put the hay along it, and then they go up and down and get their hay and their water. It's also very handy when that grass is fresh and we need to restrict their access to grass. So that first photo was in fact their very first morning out on the grass. It did involve a lot of pig rooting and barking. Not at each other, I would like to point out, just like in circles with happiness. Yeah. And so what we do is create these tiny little areas with temporary fence, and you can see they're all happily restrained by a single line. And we move them usually every day, maybe every two, depending on how much they've eaten. Those little bare patches you can see were clover. So they've been through that and they've hoovered up all the clover and then left quite a bit of the other grass. And if we just move that, it takes about 5-10 minutes in the morning, and then they move on to the next spot and they get really used to that routine. So they just walk out and they walk right out to the end and have a look around and pick their spot, and then they just put their head down. And we start them off really slowly, so they've only had an hour this week and we've just increased it a bit. If there's a heavy frost, we won't put them out at all because of the sugar level in the grass. So it's a good way to kind of introduce them into that richer source of nutrition, all the time watching their behaviour and their poo texture and quality as well. On the track, so this is the track. We put out hay bags in these little nets here. We tend to put out usually just 1 or 2 less than the number of horses. And the amount we put out, it's interesting that how much they eat varies quite a lot actually. And so we always make sure hay bags twice a day. And what we like to see is that there's some hay left over. Like we don't like to waste hay, but nor do we like them not having hay available. So usually they pick at it quite happily and then they go off and have a rest and then they come back. Be approximately 1 of those bags of horse twice a day. And because of their different nutritional requirements, we feed them in the evening separately. They each get their own hard feed and we separate them out into little kind of each little temporary electric gateways that you can buy pretty easily, and they know exactly where they're fed and what time, and they're waiting up there for their feed kind of half an hour before, and sometimes they'll actually go and stand in their spots. And for those that don't need much in the way of supplements, they just get a biscuit of lucerne or something like that. It's a good way to kind of make sure that they're getting their own food. It's not getting stolen. We have a thoroughbred that is like the slowest horse in the world to eat. And of course, she's the thinnest. So she time that anyone else needs. But it also means that you get to, cast your eyes over them and check that they're all right. It's a really good way, following the same routine each day, to pick any behavioural issues that might be developing and see how they're going. So this is their yard, which is undercover under the shed, partly open. The water is where I'm standing to take that photograph. And you can see they're pretty chilled, and most of the people who come, vets and the trimmer, comment on how relaxed a herd they are. And they barely ever trot or canter, which is, I don't know, maybe that's disturbing. Just sometimes they'll get excited and they'll canter up the length of the track, but most of the time they mooch from one place to another.
Thank you, Justine. Our move, we've gone through that fairly quickly, a bit quicker than I was expecting, so that's great. So if you would like to ask a question, we'll have about 10 minutes of Q&A that we'll record, and then time that's unrecorded for those of you that are joining us to have a chat and put up your hand in the chat box. before I go any further, I just want to mention the equine land management grazing course, which three ladies were part of in the autumn. We are running the spring one based on feedback that we had during that course in Lockwood South on the Friday, the 17th, the 31st and 14th of November. So if you would like to learn a bit more about some of the things that was talked about, we've got the equine land management grazing course coming up. So I've got a hand up from Mel. So go ahead, ask your question.
Hi. Yeah, I've just got a quick one, and that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Really enjoyed that. And my question really is to anybody. What are your thoughts on grazing off annual ryegrass? I have got an Equicentral type sort of track hybrid, and at the moment I got the horses fairly ribby over winter, you know, just sort of on the verge of ribby, and I'm quite happy with that. And there's been a lot of annual ryegrass that's popped up, and I'm just grazing them on it really happily. I've got two that would be metabolic prone, and one thoroughbred, and I don't seem to be running into any troubles. But I just wanted to know, does anybody have any experience with grazing them on areas of annual ryegrass, you know, just for a few days, and has it gone wrong for anybody?
I don't have any experience. We've got native grass. It's great for cattle.
Yeah.
I know you can ride staggers, and that's probably my negatives with ryegrass, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it before it seeds. Yeah, that's what I'm doing, is getting them to knock it down before it seeds for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah. And how much work are they in?
Oh, look, at the moment, actually, I've got one with Ross River virus, one with a torn pec, and one retired. So zero work. 3 horses, none rideable.
Quality time with them.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I've got a question. What do you do with poo? So, Amanda, what do you do with your poo?
Okay, with my poo.
Or the horse's poo.
Horse's poo.
Yeah.
And his two mates. I actually throw it over the fence on previous grazed cells. So when I'm doing where I've grazed, I put the poo back over there and then cover any bare patches, sort of spread it out. And, you know, you'll have to sort of kick it around. I mean, I hold my hands up. I did used to harrow, and I did since I've met Jason. I'm trying not to, but I think occasionally you can when the ground's right and the poo's soft enough. But I put the poo back over and then grass, and it really is good. And in fact, you can turn it over and see there are dung beetles in there, and it's keeping the fertility in the ground and the goodness. You know, it's a real natural fertilizer.
Leah, what do you do with your poo? So you're still harrowing a little bit?
Yeah, we are. But we're hoping, we don't have any on the property. So I'm hoping that now that we're moving from ad hoc worming to now a property management worming, that we might be able to get the dung beetles. And then once we get the dung beetles and once we graze that area, then we'll move them off. We won't need to do anything, because hopefully with nutrition going into the soil. Yeah, at the moment, if we don't harrow, that poo just sits there because we don't
It's hard to break it up, isn't it? That's the other thing I do is go around poo picking as well. And then I try and make my husband compost it, and then spread that back over. And then that's another way of.
So, Justine, you do something that's similar with the composting. And so what do you do in the paddocks and then on the tracks?
Yeah.
And
so the poo that falls in the paddock, remembering that they're in these fairly small areas. So what happens is that they tend to squash it anyway and break it up themselves. And we leave it there. And within somewhere between a few weeks and a few months, depending on the time of year and the moisture level. But on the track, we pick it up every day so that it doesn't kind of get slippery or mucky or produce, encourage flies. And what we do with it in winter is actually lay it in lines on the paddock and then let it break down. And then before spring, we pull it across with a tractor to spread it out onto the paddock. But it's already in a kind of semi-composted kind of state. We also do some of it and transport it to other areas of the property where the horses aren't and use it as compost too. So
one of the things you will notice as your soil health improves, we've seen this with cattle in particular, is that as the soil becomes more fungal and better in health, it'll actually start to break down much quicker. So it's really interesting what happens with your soil is reflected in how quickly the dung starts to break down and the health, sort of the whole system starts to work. This one's probably directed to you, Christine. I'm interested in the types of gravel you've used for any track or hangout areas.
Yep. So we started off by putting, when we got there, that driveway down the property was in ballast, railway ballast, so clearly not very horse friendly. So we put crushed rock down, which is okay. It's packed down nicely, it's firm, it doesn't get too wet, but it does wear their hooves quite a lot. So the yard and the upper section of track are in Seymour Toppings, which is a product it's literally 10 mil pebble all the way down. So it does pack up to be a really nice firm surface. It's actually held really well even on the steeper areas. Again, it's still a pebble and it still wears their feet a bit, and there's always a bit of tension there between the wearing of the walls and the fact that they can get a little bit tender, versus the fact that we never have any problems with mud or abscesses or foot problems in general. Yeah.
So can you explain the track system that you're talking about? So what does it mean, a system? Justine?
Is it me or?
Yeah.
Okay. So the track system with a trademark after it is actually a system that was really created by someone called Jamie Jackson in the US. And it is a whole integrated system of kind of a spatial environment and how you feed them and how you encourage social behaviours and how you provide mental stimulation. So while I say that our horses are on a track, we haven't implemented that full track system. We've utilised components of it. But to get that full track system is a reasonable kind of outlay to begin with. So it needs to be kind of well planned. There are a number of what they call livery systems or adjustment systems in the UK that are running on a track system really well, and they've got really active social media accounts, and some of them have written books about it, and they're really good sources of information on how to consider it and set it up and how to get it right so it works, because it's a lot of money and you want it to work.
So for you, Amanda, what did you just sort of set up a ring around the paddock? So.
And I have to say, I remember going home to my hubby saying, this track system, what a load of rubbish. But, I know the equine world is just a funny old world and stuff, but I have learned you have got to try things and you make mistakes. And I have to say, my God, it's brilliant. So what I did was I then got husband involved again with the tractor, which is really good. If you do exciting things, they're really helpful. And then set up polywire around the inside, and then had a couple of meters length either side, and then I had wide where they could sort of park up for shade, and sort of dry. So I just had grass. We haven't put any hard surface down, but having done a season of it now, we realise there are some places that are quite wet. So I think for us, it doesn't have to be expensive. If you've got polywire and stuff, you just do things that are simple. I mean, I've got 2 sheep as well, so keeping them in it, and it's just doing simple things. It does work, and it's certainly with my Red, he's happy just mooching about and less likely to run.
So for you, it's a circular, full circle around the sort of the outskirts of the paddock. For you, Justine, it's just a one-way track at the moment, and they wander down all the way to the end, and then back. And you sometimes put stimuli at the end. Would you put feed or something?
Sometimes go and put some lucerne up the end to try and get them to explore further down the track. At the moment, there's a bit of green grass on each side of the track, so they very happily walk up and down all day trying to get to the bits of grass. So
and Leah, you haven't ventured into track system at
Haven't
the
seen
moment.
mine.
Not yet. Not yet.
For all 3 of you, so how long do you rest areas for? So Leah, how long?
It'll depend on the time of year, how much growth. Ideally, as a rough general rule, if the grass gets to 15 centimetres, I want to take them off. Just to save, I guess, once you've got the height of the grass, the height of the roots or depth of the roots. We aren't always doing that. We're often grazing lower. But look, once the grass has got to 15 centimetres plus, then we can put them back on. So it really depends on how many horses, the biggest, the size. If we're going to go to strip grazing, then we'll, like Justine does, move them daily. It's just depend on the size, and then come back once that grass is regenerated.
Amanda, how long do you rest paddocks for?
Well, having done your course, with the cows and stuff, it's trying to let that grass. So that comparison photo was March, and then what was that, September? So it's a few months. It's just allowing, and I suppose again it depends what time of year. How much rain you've had. So it's sort of varied. It's allowing that older and longer grass to grow.
And for you, Justine, so you've got a wetter farm, so.
So we basically, the only rule is we won't put them back on until the grass is ready. So it's generally, we can go around the property 2 to 3 times throughout kind of the 8 months that they're on paddocks. But if we run out of grass, we simply won't do it. We'll put them on the track and give them hay.
And the last question before we stop recording is, when worming, do you worm horses in a sacrifice paddock or keep them to a certain area? Justine, what do you do?
So we do worm. So we use fecal egg counts, and we also we do that to check the worm burden, but we also do that to check resistance. And generally speaking, we worm them once a year in winter for the bot, and they're always on the track in that period. And for that period, we collect up the poo for like 5 or 7 days, and we put it in a particular spot, and we leave it there for 3 or 4 months. And by that point of time, the active deworming chemicals should be in, and we roll it into the paddocks.
Amanda?
If and when I do worm, and I had to one time because Goose was sick on grand final day, which is a really good day not to be sick. I will contain them for 48 hours, 24, 48 hours in area.
Yep.
And then turn them out.
And Leo, what do you do with all those multiple mobs? And
Yeah.
but you said you've changed your worming
Yeah,
practices.
yeah. I'm 48 hours, but we will probably be worming less in the future. So yeah, but still 48 hours I'd like to collect the manure for. Maybe I should, I don't know. I'll look into it.
Yeah. And on that, you can join us for a fecal egg count workshop that we're running in Tilden and Romsey, I think, are the two places. And that is, I thought I had the dates. I don't. The 11th and 12th. So the evening of the 11th and then the 12th in Romsey, if you'd like to join us. Thank you for watching our webinar tonight, and I will just stop the recording. There we go.